Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, yWhales, wherever in the world you are today. So it's late August, August 23rd, 2022. And, we're probably about 60 days ish away. Actually, not even 60 days away. I think we're about 30 days away potentially from the ETH merge. And so what's happening with the crypto market right now is it's just in a state of flux. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? And so you have just all this viability hinging on this blockchain that I'm sure technically will work. Doesn't mean philosophically it'll work, but that's a whole different story of which we're not here to debate today. The point to make is that it's whether it's a bear or whether it's a winter. I don't think. I think we're more in a bear, and a bull can eventually really rise back up here shortly. But I always go back to the builders are building. And the next bull run is not going to be built during the bull run. It's built, during the bears and during the winters. That's exactly what happens. And so with me today is Bill Gelpi. Again, really have a long history, but let's kind of take a few steps back, Bill. Where did you come from, and how did you get interested in kind of the Web3 asset class?
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Jay, and great to be here. Thanks for having me. I love what you've done with yWhales, bringing together a great community of people to learn and explore the cutting edge of technology. And a little background about myself, I've been a technology enthusiast since I was a kid. My dad really got me into tech, and my first love was gaming, and really kind of lived in the first metaverses, the first virtual worlds that were coming out in the late 90s. At 13, I started playing EverQuest, which was the kind of the first MMORPG. And between age 14 and my early 20s, I spent more time living in those virtual worlds than I actually spent in real life. I was guild leader running, 150 person clans, and competing in kind of the first esports before they're big and televised. Really, out of college, I started my first gaming company, taking that passion and trying to make a career out of it. And that led me to a job in product management at Zynga during the heyday of
Wow.
the social gaming boom. While I was there, I led product for a couple of their biggest franchises, Frontierville and Zynga Poker, which were about $200 million a year revenue titles. And after that, I left, and at 27 started my own game studio again with my co-founder Steve and John, who actually met in World of Warcraft, believe it or not.
Wow.
So a lot of my best friends come from MMORPGs, and we bootstrapped that company with $50,000 of our own money to a $50 million a year business in 3 years. And we ended up selling that in 2016, stayed on for a little bit, and then took a little time off, and, saw what I really want to do in this next chapter of my life. And during that period, I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep making games, but I was reminded of how much gaming meant to me, and especially last year when there was more talk about the metaverse and NFTs and blockchain gaming. I was inspired to kind of come back and build some experiences that I would really love to play, and that my friends would really love to play. I think the industry is this technology is still really young. There's a lot of opportunity, and as kind of a tech enthusiast, I'm excited to come back and tinker, and to see how NFTs and blockchain can make gaming even better.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot of things you said that I really want to take a second and talk about from the history of really gaming. And so, I was a '90s kid, and so kind of that birth of dial up internet into kind of internet games and whatnot. And my first like real big MMORPG, kind of time sink suck, or life's force abandonment was Eve Online. And it was an incredibly complex game that's been described as spreadsheets online,
Mm-hmm.
from a variety of reasons. But it showcased a very complicated game of which there was, I want to say, usually there was about 100,000 plus people around the world that were playing at the same time. And
Hmm.
this was a very expensive game to play. And it was a game. It was exactly the same as what you do. There was, instead of guilds, there was corporations and alliances and all the other
Oh
things. So
yeah.
it's a very big hierarchy of people and organizational templates and structures that could be built, of which there was a base level of instructions. But really, it was like, go have fun and do what you want. And during this time, and Eve is still around today, and I would hate to even think about the number of hours I put into this, but multiple kind of quote unquote metaverses kind of came and went, Second Life, and a variety. There's other ones where it's like you're virtually somewhere, but you have nothing to do. And I think
Hmm.
that that's one of the biggest failures that we've seen right now out of metaverses. And I'm not knocking on anyone. I think that Decentraland is trying something because they're starting with a blockchain. I can say whatever bad things I want to about Axie Infinity while they laugh in their hundreds of millions of dollars that they make every month. But it's got to be better than that, and it has to be engaging, and it has to showcase a lot. And so I'm really excited, to see, the professional developers that do understand that it has to be something engaging that brings people back, time and time again. That if you enjoy that experience, you can only get it from something, like what you're building. And I think too often that we're seeing a lot of the failures in the space of people saying, buy an NFT and I promise you I'm going to build you something later. I promise. It's like,
Yeah.
here's a sizzle reel of which we paid somebody else that's not going to work on the project to make something that looks amazing. And I'm not going to say the names of any of these things. But they have no ability to execute. And you've done this multiple times. Like, you have your 10,000 hours in online gaming, not just from playing it, and that's just
Sure.
playing it's an education,
Yeah.
actual writing code. And that's really a cool thing, Bill.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks so much, Jay. You touched on a lot of interesting pieces there, and you're right. There are people in game development who don't have that background in gaming themselves. When I worked at Zynga, you could see the difference between people who truly grew up loving games and their design intuition of how things should feel was quite different than people who came in only with a background in consumer products and saw games as just a product. And there's a lot of power in that type of thinking of using that analytical thinking to optimize the experience and things like that. But at the end of the day, games are an experience, and they need to entertain, they need to connect, they need to motivate, help people achieve. But I think what we're seeing in the space is that there was a lot of easy money that people were raising in ICOs and tokens, and there was kind of a new paradigm of kind of funding that people were operating on, where hey, you kind of build the protocol layer, get people in, and then you worry about the product later. And it's just really hard to do that with games because you to think that the fun of the game just in a white paper before you start building it is kind of is naive. And so I think I don't blame people for kind of approaching it the same way that some of the more successful blockchain projects have approached it, with a more economic mindset of let's just create the economic incentives, align incentives throughout the ecosystem participants, and then the ecosystem will produce a good game. And
Yeah. No, and I mean, listen,
sounds good on paper.
think of all the hate that some of the AAA studios get for pre-releases. Like, oh my God, you're going to buy that game a month or 2 months before it's released. Let's be clear, they're going to release something, unless we're talking like Duke Nukem Forever or whatever the case is, where it's just it runs on for forever and ever. But I'd say for the most part, 98% of the games that a current AAA up and running studio puts a pre-release for sale out, they're going to get it out there here sooner or later. And all of a sudden you have people then throwing hundreds of millions of dollars instead at these blockchain companies
Mm.
where it's literally a couple kids that go, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make a game that does this and this and this, and here, buy your characters,
Mm-hmm.
for $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 a piece, and we promise these characters are going to be included in the game. They've never even made a game. They don't even know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But they have all this money, and at some point, if you're in some cases a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid, and you're looking at a crypto account that's got 20, 30, 40, $50 million in it,
Yeah.
you're just going to rug. Nobody knows who you are in the first place. And it happens time and time again. And some of them make some decent efforts to do it, and it just doesn't happen. And or they produce something that's really like first gen from 20 years ago. And
Yeah.
so, with all that in mind, and with the, I think there is a massive demand for NFT assets, for blockchain gaming, and for, if we're going to do microtransactions, like, that's cool, great. But can I actually own it? What can I actually do? And so let's go ahead and pivot over, and let's talk about Perfect Storm, and what you guys are building, why you're building it, and kind of the market niche that satisfies.
Yeah, sure. So, again, I'm a gamer first and foremost, and I spent, over 10 years making games. And honestly, over that time, myself and many of my colleagues never had an opportunity to really build something that we truly wanted to play ourselves. And so that's been a root of our motivation to come back and build a new game company, Perfect Storm. So we're taking a lot of the things that we loved growing up, MMORPGs, MOBAs, competitive online games, and kind of blending those together in a new game experience that, roughly we could call it a MOBA verse, which, to for those in the audience that don't know that term, MOBA stands for multiplayer online battle arena, and it's one of the biggest genres of esports right now, led by the likes of Tencent with League of Legends, which is run by Riot Games, and Dota 2 and MLBB, makes about $5 billion a year in revenue, and extremely popular, enjoyed by 300 million people monthly worldwide. And so what we're really trying to do is take that format that's loved and played by so many people around the world, and solve one of the key problems that it has, which has a very toxic community. And really, this stems from the transactional nature of relationships in the game. It's fundamentally a 5v5 team-based game, and you go into a 2D interface, click a button, get thrown into a game with 9 other people. You duke it out, and then you get thrown back into a lobby by yourself, alone. And no surprise, people who play these games are in the 90th percentile on loneliness. They want engaging conversations. And so we thought, geez, why not have an actual virtual world outside the game where you have a persistent identity, where you can make friends, form guilds, join parties, go in, play your 5v5 MOBA match, come back out into the virtual world, show off all the things, all the achievements you've collected, all the virtual items that you've collected in the game. Give so much more meaning to the things that you're earning in game, that you can show them off to everybody in that kind of verse portion of the game. And long term, open it up to be a creator economy, because these games were born out of modding platforms from Warcraft 3, and the long history of it. 2003, Dota 1 came out of a mod of Warcraft 3, and then that essentially inspired Riot Games to make League of Legends, which has gone on to make about $20 billion over the past 10 years. The original game modders who created that genre, they didn't see anything from it. They barely have any history that can be seen today from that. And so that's kind of roughly what we're building here is I kind of see it as combining three things: combining the kind of MMO World of Warcraft social experience, that MMO social experience, combining that with the most engaging competitive gaming experience of League of Legends, and then a bit of this, Roblox-like crafting, trading, user-generated content where people can contribute to the game, participate in a robust, open trading economy, and we loved the idea of incorporating blockchain technology there because going back to when we grew up, I can't see any of my achievements or items in history that I have from EverQuest and from World of Warcraft. I was a gladiator in season one, which is top 0.5% of players. That was the esports before esports were big, and yet I don't have anything that I can show today to say, hey, look at that, look what I did. And so that's kind of how we see at least one of the big benefits of incorporating some NFTs and blockchain is the provable scarcity, the provenance of assets, and the emerging set of use cases that when you adopt the standards of ERC, the ERC standards for tokens, you get to benefit from the growing set of use cases. That token can now show up in Twitter. It can show up in Instagram. It can be traded on OpenSea. And over the next decade, the sky's the limit to the types of experiences we'll see that are built around that standard.
Yeah, and started off with the asset class in Web3 overall gaming, like it's got a long way to mature. And I'm sure you guys have run into numerous issues of, what chain am I going to use, and a variety of other issues. And we've seen some people go, it's all on chain. And we've seen, even with the cheap gas and transaction fees on Solana, some people trying to record every single solitary move some of these characters and players make to the blockchain. No one cares what they, like where you moved around on the screen. Like, so
Sure.
there's a good hybrid model that hasn't been entirely figured out yet. But things like in-game assets, like my kids are finally old enough that they want to play Call of Duty. And so, we're playing Call of Duty. And in Call of Duty, there's like 18 different versions of this. The fact that it's one gaming studio, that you cannot transfer assets or even see assets from one game to another, or achievements from one to the next, is just infuriating. It's like, why these kids are grinding their way. I got to get this gun, I got to get this everything else, and then they finish it, and then the new game comes out, and you guys start all over. And okay, that's fine, that's part of the fun. But as you said, there's nothing that's being carried forward. And right now with blockchain, it's such an easy thing to do. It's so easy to take some of these assets, and it opens up an entirely new universe, that we're seeing, kind of the play to live, play to earn assets, where people can spend the time playing a game which they're passionate about and they love, and make a living from it without having to make yet another crappy YouTube channel of them yelling and screaming at the camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. I mean, look, there's been secondary markets for people to buy and trade assets in games. I've been buying stuff in EverQuest and World of Warcraft since the late '90s in EverQuest, and these have always existed in gray markets, and I think it's a challenge for game developers to enable and to allow secondary markets. I mean, there's clearly an economic incentive that the game developers have to not allowing that transferability. Any demand on a secondary market, any supply of digital assets on a secondary market, runs the risk of, they would say, cannibalizing their primary revenue, and they want gamers to keep consuming, keep buying the new
Yep.
digital stuff that's coming out, and so they, candidly have very little incentive to make those things transferable. But as I see it, it takes some novel thinking on how that type of economy can be designed. I think it's much harder to design and develop actual free market style economies in games. But you brought up Eve Online early on. These can exist. I think certain genres of games are easier to create these in than others. But yeah, my hope is that we see with some of the one of the things that I think is most interesting to me and most exciting to me is how um, blockchain communities are trying to create more inclusive economies in around their games. Where the what I would love to see is that gamers themselves have more of a seat at the table, so to speak, uh, in the projects that are actually being created, and that they're not just on the consuming end of it, but they're actually able to co-create with the developer to extend the IP in ways that they think are interesting and fun, and to unlock that creative potential of gamers. Gamers are some of the brightest, smartest, most passionate people. And I'm biased because being a gamer myself and all my friends, uh, that's really my hope, and something that I see as just kind of inspiring about some of these early blockchain communities is how much they try to make it a co-creative effort. And there's a challenge in making a game to harness that potential, but I think there's some exciting models that can be followed to harness that creativity.
That's awesome. So there's a lot of, when we talk about the technology and everything else, it is rapidly evolving. Every 6 months it changes. Every year it's an entirely different landscape. And there's no right or wrong answer at this point. I mean, you can, it's people that chose Ethereum in some cases chose it because that was the only option that was available for an EVM compatible chain when they started. And now it's, that they're kind of locked in. What are some of the technologies choices you've made? I mean, there's Unity, there's Unreal, there's a variety of chains and protocols. What are some of the choices you made and kind of why?
Yeah, there's a lot that we can go in there. To start, we've been building in Unity for a long time, and so we chose to continue to work in Unity. They have the largest market share and sort of the most robust developer community of 3D game engines. So we chose to continue working with Unity for its ability to allow us to develop very quickly and to have complete cross-platform compatibility. In the MOBA genre started out more as a PC-based game. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen greater interest in mobile, with MLBB growing from nothing to about 70 million monthly players on mobile, serving an underserved niche there. And we think it's important to have going forward that games need to be cross-platform. People need to be able to play wherever they want to play, and especially maybe something that the viewers may not think about, especially games that have strong network effects around them.
Mm-hmm.
These multiplayer games, they're only fun if you have friends to play with, and if your friend doesn't have a PC that can play it, but he has a phone, and we may take this for granted being in the US, but there's many geographies where cell phone is the primary device, and they may not have a PC, a laptop to game on. And so keeping that accessibility for everyone to play by being available on as many platforms as possible is very important to forge those network effects around the product. As far as the blockchain technology, as you mentioned, things are changing very quickly. Things look very differently than when we started the company late last year. And our perspective has always been try to isolate the risk of any type of blockchain technology. So we want to be cross-chain compatible with our assets. But I think more importantly than that is we think it's very important that there's a very easy on ramp for people to play the game. You shouldn't need to have a wallet to play. That in my view, fundamentally, it's a database technology essentially, and players should need to know how to interact with the database in order to actually play the game. So we've deliberately been developing the game so that you can come in, you can start to collect items in the game. Those items are represented on the blockchain as NFTs, and you can essentially, if you don't have a wallet, you can go over there when you want to create a wallet and redeem the NFT into your own wallet. So this way, there's no friction to come in, start playing, start collecting items, and only should you choose, you can go and convert those into an NFT that you hold in your own wallet.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's a lot of problems with Web3 still, and one of the biggest ones is wallets. And so, even if listen, we know the target market for gamers, while we like to think of it as ourselves, it is still a younger generation of which has very short attention spans. And the last thing you want to do is frustrate people with that onboarding process. There's a game, let's play the game. They can't even stand the cutscenes, let alone like having to go, oh, I got to stop and figure out how to integrate a Web3 wallet into this. And so,
Yeah.
I love that concept of like, let's just play, let's just have a normal Web2 interface, Web2 accounts. And if and when you want to claim these items, I think that's a really great approach. So I like that.
Yeah. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah. So, I want to kind of talk a little bit about the overall kind of like gaming asset class, and a little bit outside of just the blockchain side of things, because there is a talent scarcity across really any type of coding or technology based company right now. And with blockchain gaming, you got like the worst of all worlds. You have 3D designers, which are in heavy demand right now, because we're most likely gonna see video games overtake Hollywood here in the very near future. So the demand is real there. But then two, you're a blockchain developer, and years in the space is just not many, and so getting experienced developers in some cases doesn't exist. How are you finding getting people to buy into your vision and buy into what you guys are building from a talent acquisition standpoint?
Yeah, we have the benefit of having a lot of years under our belt here, and so the original team that we put together, we've been together for a decade. Most of us met each other at Zynga, and so
You guys are like the PayPal mafia.
yeah, just to some degree, Zynga has such a storied history. It was such an entrepreneurial company, and from that, I think over 250 companies spun out and have been quite successful. Even today, many of the largest game studios in the world, Roblox, Epic, they have heads of product that from that early Zynga cohort. So, I can't speak to more broadly the challenges that other developers are feeling, but I will say that everyone that has come and joined Perfect Storm has done so because we have a fantastic culture. We really are people first. We really try to make it an amazing place to work at, and that we're building a product that they really want to play. So when we say, hey, you can make a MOBA, there are so many people out there that have, as I said, 150 million monthly players play League of Legends. So I think that's the first thing I would say, and piece of advice is build something that people actually care about, and people will be happy to come work with you to create that. Build something that nobody cares about, and you may struggle.
Yeah. Listen, and it's true. It's one of those things. So with that ability, because again, that's one of the biggest differences I think between Web3 and predecessors Web2 is this concept of community. And there's always any popular game has a community, but they're relatively decentralized and not in the right meaning. Meaning
Sure.
that you generally have here's the game. and then there's a lot of third parties that are trying to facilitate what a community means around there. So it doesn't come from corporate, it doesn't come from the same people that are trying to help showcase ins and outs. And every now and then there's a forum that they'll have on there, but it's not
Sure.
really that that's not the crux of where they are. So in Web3, we can solve all this because we can do a lot of things. Number one, you can create a community in a variety of places, but through tokens and NFTs and everything else, you can actually provide ownership or potentially revenue generating kind of resources around this, as well as giving them governance to decide what should we do, where should we go? Because at the end of the day, who are you building this for? It's not for yourself. I know you're really excited to play all your games that you're building, but you want to
Sure.
make sure that you're facilitating this. And so the core concept of having a community with governance and ownership of an actual game or series of games is like, you couldn't do it before well, because what are you going to do, is issue stock certificates to every single kid out there? How have you guys kind of approached communities
Hmm.
with Perfect Storm?
Yeah, I think that's an area that we need to educate ourselves even more about. It's as you said, this is not a natural way for game developers to approach development, to really co-create with the community from the early days. Usually, as you said, there's this kind of clear barrier between the internal development team and the external customer. And so we're really excited about that potential to bring the community in earlier and get them involved. And so we're launching our first vertical slice of the product towards the end of the year here, and we're going to create a program where people can come in, start playing it, provide feedback, provide direction on the new classes that come into the game, the new cosmetics that come into the game, and try our best from the earliest days to co-create it with the community. But as far as what's the right governance model, I think it's project by project. I think in game projects, you still do need to have a great degree of central coordination in the early days of the project. Any game that is going to involve a high degree of game balance around the actual combat or the economy, that's not something that can be totally decentralized to everyone. And so as I kind of see it right now, is that the early days, the things that can be decentralized better is more cosmetic items that come into the game. Hey,
Yeah.
what are the new emotes? What are the new dance moves that go in? What are the new costumes that are going in? Those things we would love to open up for the creativity of the community, because you know we can get a lot more variety. The It can be a lot more sensitive to local tastes and interests around the globe. So those, I think, are great candidates for early decentralization to the community. I think the some of the combat dynamics need to be more centrally coordinated for a period of time. But once the foundational technology is up and running and kind of the core combat rules are established, I think that is something that can also be more opened up and decentralized for the community to contribute to.
Yeah, and, one of the really important things that I hope, I don't know, but I hope really it happens in Web3 blockchain gaming is the ability to migrate characters and assets from game to game.
Mm.
And while that may sound a little strange, I mean, at the end of the day, like I get it that each game may have different hit points and armor and lots of other things, but the identity and this idea of digitizing your identity and having on-chain your identity. Um, if I could choose to have one character of which I actually enjoy, I built, I liked, or you can use Ready Player Me or Mutable X, one of these kind of third parties to make a character. I really hope that starts to facilitate that when I play a game, whether it's a Perfect Storm game, or anything else online, is that I really do want, as long as there's some core functionality flowing through it, that my character, I don't have to go through the design phase every single time over and over again. Is that something that and again, it's a leading question, and I hope you answer yes. But I hope that some of the stuff does flow from game to game.
Yeah, I think that's I hope so too. I think that'll be very interesting to see more interoperability between games. I think there's always going to be a need and a space for different identity, different aesthetics. Taking my orc from World of Warcraft and playing that in PUBG, Player Unknown Battleground, a first-person shooter. Um, may break the immersive experience of going over there, but at least having options to have game experiences that have more persistence of identity through them, I think is really interesting to explore. Certainly for us, we're planning from the beginning that all the games that we build around this MOBAverse will share a persistent identity, and all the cosmetics and items and achievements that people earn in all the games can be brought back to kind of a central social space. So whether you go off and play your MOBA or your card battler or your auto chess game, or your hero shooter, everything you collect in all those different games can be shown in the central social space. And I think I know there, as you mentioned, Ready Player Me. There are some companies that are trying to facilitate this. My view is that oftentimes there's a consumer product that reaches mass market success, and then they essentially establish the standard for everyone else. So if anyone solves this, it's likely to be Epic, given how much how large their user base is, how popular they are. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really, and you're hitting on the standards things that I think is a really great conversation to have, because what we want, what we want is that we have a wallet full of all these NFTs. We paid tens of dollars, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars. We don't know, but we see people spending, insane amounts of money to have some of the first characters that are going to go into a game. The game hasn't been developed. We don't know if it's going to be built, but that idea that we can we can take that asset and say it goes in game A, goes in game B, maybe not goes in game C, but at least it has other availability. And from you as a game developer, if all you have to build is worlds, if you just go, look, everyone's got characters, everyone's got weapons. We're going to facilitate and use, same as you would any open source code. You go, look, as long as they adhere to these standards, you can use your phone on whatever network you want. You can drive your car on whatever road. These are the laws, these are the rules of the game and the rules of the metaverse. I mean, I would think that would drastically speed up what you could do if you're only focused on the world and the gameplay rules, and you're not having to develop all the different characters and everything else, because people are just bringing those in and show up and they're already ready to go. I mean, we're not today there. That's 5+ years down the road.
Yeah, I think in that case, we can't. We have to be careful to make broad generalizations around all the different types of game genres. Mm-hmm. So in our case, the characters themselves have such tight design constraints, because it is an esport that you're playing. The visual clarity of combat needs to be extremely high. In milliseconds, you need to be able to identify, who am I fighting against? What abilities do they have? How can they attack me? How can I defend against that? And so from an animation standpoint, from a artistic, like art style standpoint, visual clarity is extremely important for the legibility of the game. And so even for us doing this all in-house, we have to really be creative within these constraints to allow for some expressive freedom for the player, but also to make all the combat extremely clear when they're inside the 5v5 competitive mode. And so I think that, again, that's just an example of our case. I think maybe other MMOs more broadly, if you're playing something that's less of a player versus player kind of competitive game, those visual design constraints are a lot looser, and you can have more freedom if you're playing. Um, so I think there are probably some genres where being able to import your identity and assets could speed things up, but um, I don't see that as the case for the
And
genre we're in.
but Bill, this is why we bring the experts on here, because I have no idea what I'm talking about in any way, shape, or form. And you just clarified something, because I've heard this time and time again. And I mean, literally, there's entire companies dedicated to, well, we're going to make the characters, and someone else is going to make the games, and then our characters are just going to bounce around. And I mean, these people in some cases have raised hundreds of millions of dollars to do this. And the reality is, what you're basically saying is, unless you're going to have like Mario World Maker, where all the physics are the same, and you're just that's it. Like, yeah, you can bring whatever character you want in, but it's the same game after the same game after the same game. You're not going to get any of the really in-depth things that make a AAA game, which is those nuances, like that. It's, when something hits, it has to react this way instantly. It can't be a generic animation of this or that. And so I think that really showcases and helps for me understanding the space. The cross compatibility is still a far gone dream. And
Yeah,
while there are certain genres that you're right, they're probably, like a Sims game. Like, great, you bring in
sure,
whatever
sure.
sim, walk around, put the little bubble on their head, and great,
Yeah,
nobody
yeah,
cares. But if we're talking action, if we're talking the things that really do attract people to most of the MMORPGs, or the actual technical term that you call them, it's a lot harder than that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it may even be possible in first-person shooters. Sure, run around and swap out the gun, and you can be whatever character you want. I mean, Fortnite is certainly showing the creative range they can have on characters. There, they just added Dragon Ball Z to their IP. But it's specifically, I can only speak when we get to the real details about our own project. I would say probably 75% of the cost that goes into each of the classes that we make is actually in the engineering the different abilities that the class has, the animations and the VFX that character is going to do. If he's going to do a backflip and then drop a trap, that's not going to come over in a third-party generic asset. It's okay. We've got to design that backflip and that trap and that VFX that comes with it, and then code in the engineering logic for what that does in combat. Okay, it roots the player in place, does damage to them, all of that. We'd still have to code. So
Yeah, but the one thing that does survive this, and the one thing I think that still is there, is that, as Perfect Storm makes games, you know the standards of which you want to build your characters,
mm-hmm.
and the core concept is, whether you allow it or not, that I could take
Totally.
from version A to version B to version C, that I can carry these assets forward, which, right now at Fortnite, the only reason they carry them forward is because it's always the same deal. It's always the same, the different seasons and everything else. And you
Yeah.
can, my 15-year-old is super into it. And so he's just super proud that he's got some of the,
Nice.
season 2 and season 3 characters. They have no extra abilities. It doesn't matter, what you're using. But I really find, that idea that if he wanted to, if they came out with a different game, would they make those move forward? They probably wouldn't. They're going to want you to buy different skins and everything else. So I think there's a ton of clarity that you just provided on how hard this is and how early we are in the asset class. Because I've talked to people, they go, yeah, we're just going to make the characters, and we're going to make them in Unity, and they have a bunch of different features, and it'll just work. Like, it'll just be fine. Here we will publish the open standards, of which the characters will walk and shoot guns and do everything else. And you're over here going like, dude, no, like it's got to be amazing. And then maybe one day you'll publish, what your standards are. But right now it's still game development as it's been for the last 2 decades.
Yeah, and I think it's to some degree this is kind of creating, in that case there, it's creating this like multi-sided market of like, well, which problem do you start with? And I think I'm more bullish on somebody building a really great mass market consumer product and then opening the standard, rather than building the standard and hoping that developers then go build the mass market game. On top of that, the only company I guess I would be bullish on that is either Epic or Facebook, because they already have the audience. But you know, uh,
I got to tell you, audience may be large on Facebook, but my God, their meta demos just showcase like literally, it's like they pulled like some old Zynga footage out of like nothing's occurred in the last decade plus, and I mean I don't even know what they're doing.
yeah.
I don't see any value to what they're creating or what his vision even is the scariest part.
Mm. I haven't been following it too closely, but I think they're working within a lot of constraints with the hardware. It's got to be low cost. It's got to be high performant. It's got to be, even where it's at right now is not good enough. We want 8K per eye. We want 16K pixels per eye. We need 90 frames per second. Um, but I think something that they've seen from the beginning in running Facebook is it's about getting users and getting them to create. And so I think something that he's probably thinking very hard on is how can I keep this accessible for people to create within my platform, and creating. We've seen a trend here from text-based social networks to image-based social networks to video-based social networks to maybe immersive content-based social networks. The jump in complexity from recording a video and doing some production on it to creating immersive 3D assets and 3D worlds, it's a much higher barrier to get in. And so uh, I would imagine that's something that they're trying to balance, is the hardware constraints, the frame rate of the performance of it, and how to make it easier for creators to come and build inside and around the game.
They spent $10 billion over the last 14 months.
Whew,
If we gave you 10 billion, if we gave you 10 billion, what could you build?
I don't know. There's no way we could deploy 10 billion, but
Somehow they did it, and they produced nothing. So that's the
yeah.
worst part about it. Bill, I mean, really fabulous discussion. I think for anyone that's really thinking about, whether they're going to build a game, or they would like to invest in a team that's building a project game like Perfect Storm. What are some of the ways to kind of come about that? Some of the theses that you've developed over your career and that you're deploying now into Perfect Storm.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks, Jay. That's a good question. I think the biggest thing I would say when it comes to gaming is not all game genres are equal. There's very different dynamics in each of the different game categories, game genres. And in particular, if you're looking at this intersection between blockchain and gaming, I think you really need to look towards game genres that have very strong network effects within them. They're extremely durable businesses, and what I mean by that is look towards the large online multiplayer competitive games or MMOs. These games are very durable because you can't just copy the game and launch a competitor. The value of the product is in the audience and the player base that's around it. You take the MOBA genre that we're working in right now, and there is no MOBA game if you can't connect and play with other people. And I think a lot of value can be unlocked around these games that have deep network effects by introducing blockchain technology. And so that's our thesis is that the best businesses over the past a couple decades in gaming, the Blizzards, the Riots, the Robloxes, the Fortnites, Epic Games, all of these are powered by strong network effects, and that there will emerge a new leader from you know at this intersection of blockchain and gaming that finds a way to power those network effects with blockchain.
One of the things I really like about the thought of blockchain gaming, and I think that a lot of people knock on it because they just think it's another way for microtransactions to take over the world, and but at least having some level of ownership to me would be worth it. And the thought that let's say Perfect Storm, you guys put out your game, and all your characters and your assets are all somebody can say, you know what, that was great, I loved it, it's taken over my life for years. I need to take a break, which is generally when you say you won a game. I won because I quit, getting my life back. But they can take those assets and go, I don't want to get rid of these, and put them in a wallet. And let's just say years down the road that someone else has developed a game and goes, you know what, I remember when Perfect Storm built that thing years ago, and the servers have long since been shut down, but it's a retro game of which I had great fun with my friends. I enjoyed it. And they can fire something up and recognize those old assets, and think about all those games that you've played and I've played, and just lost to time because they shut down the servers. And there's some games I remember having thousands of hours in. Just I absolutely love them. And the developer just said, you know what, there's not enough ability to maintain this. And so when they turn off the servers, you lose your assets, you lose your identity, and you just kind of have a few memories of these games. And I love what you're talking about, which is just the thought of ownership of your online identity, your online games. And that creates communities that may not even have been a thing, but giving some backwards compatibility to an asset on a game 10 years down the road may create a sub community of people that showed up and go, oh my God, look, it works with this Perfect Storm character that's been sitting around doing nothing for 5 years. And I think that's a really interesting way to think about where the world's going. And it does give a little bit of I think validity to the idea that microtransactions in games, don't have to be a bad thing as long as you own it. You're not just, shipping money off to, the developer that's going to shut down the game in 6 months.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jay. It's a good closing thought there, and I agree. As I said, I have tens of thousands of hours in EverQuest and World of Warcraft, and I would love to be able to show those achievements and those items off in the games that I play today. I can't imagine how fun it would be to be able to ride around in my Swift Nether Drake in League of Legends and show that, hey, I was a gladiator back then. So yeah, one can hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Bill, if people are interested in what you guys are building, interested in joining you, or just learning more, where's the best place for them to come find you guys?
Yeah, the best place, come see us at perfectstorm.gg. I have a link there to our Discord, and or hit me up on LinkedIn, Bill Gelpi.
Awesome. Bill, thank you for your time. yWhales, that's Bill with Perfect Storm. We will catch you guys later. Thanks so much.